Thank you for joining our webinar today. This presentation will review the key areas of the current Black Lives Matter movement and the founding principles of the Kajenga Wellness Project, funded by the Ontario Trillium Foundation. The purpose of this webinar is to provide you with information and to encourage you to do your research. In the United States, the movement is more publicized and organized amongst federal and state levels. With the murder of George Floyd in the US, the Black Lives Matter movement and anti-Black racism theory took an international stage. This presentation is presented by Jordana Guida and Samantha Prasad.
What does anti-Black racism mean? How does this impact our lives, our children's lives? In Ontario, it means that Black babies experience a different life than other children. It means that you can expect racism exists throughout their childhood into their adulthood. It means that Black children don't have access to the same treatment and healthcare. It means that Black girls don't love their skin and wish they were different. It means that Black boys feel like they are always in trouble and nobody cares about them. It means that Black boys and girls are separated from their families and placed into foster care. It means that they will remain in foster care and may never return home or become adopted. It means that Black youth are discouraged from entering university and forced into trades careers. It means that Black men are stopped by the police more than their counterparts, and further arrested and charged. It means that Black males spend more time in per-sentence custody than other youth. It means that Black males are sentenced for lengthier time in prison. It means that Black men and women enter relationships with inherent feelings of shame, worthlessness, and low self-confidence, and that these stressors can negatively impact their relationships. It means that Black adults often feel isolated. They are rarely promoted to supervisor or managerial positions, although they have the education and the experience. It means that when they begin to speak in a meeting, they are often interrupted and their ideas are disregarded. It changes you. It alters your personality.
The roots of oppression. We often start our history of oppression with slavery, but it is a defining feature of the dismantling of our systems due to slavery. Slavery was maintained due to a system of practice that altered the mindset and experiences of Black people that normalized slavery, which continued for centuries. Post-slavery consists of laws that were developed, which continued to reinforce white privilege and keep Black people from accessing resources such as education, physicians, restaurant services such as hair salon stores, and more. Systemic issues have continued to occur in 2020. This is not an experience only felt by Americans, but Canadians experience serious systemic issues. Canada's systemic problems stem from promoting and cultivating whiteness and white privilege. In Ontario, Black youth have a higher proportion of rates being involved in child welfare systems. They remain in foster care longer. They experience lower outcomes for education success. They have higher incidences of involvement in police and criminal justice systems, and they are less mentored by their employers and rarely promoted or hold positions of power within their organization.
Racism starts from birth. This child is treated differently from utero, and his outcome is determined by racism. Equity means that we examine the systems in place that exist in healthcare, child welfare, the education system, the after-school and daycare programs, the public system, poverty and financial systems, housing systems, police and criminal justice systems, university and college systems, careers, and environmental systems. The life cycle of racism is a tool taught by Tina Lopez, equity leader, that is helpful in understanding the life cycle of racism.
What is anti-Black racism? Anti-Black racism is prejudice, attitudes, beliefs, stereotyping, and discrimination that is directed at people of African descent and is rooted in their unique history and experience of enslavement and its legacy. Anti-Black racism is deeply entrenched in the Canadian institutions, policies, and practices to the extent that anti-Black racism is either functionally normalized or rendered invisible to the larger white society. Anti-Black racism is manifested in the current social, economic, and political marginalization of Black people, which includes unequal opportunities, lower socioeconomic status, higher unemployment, significant poverty rates, and overrepresentation in the criminal justice system. It is helpful to understand the anti-racism approach. Anti-racism is a process, a systemic method of analysis, and a proactive course of action rooted in recognition of the existence of racism, including systemic racism. Anti-racism actively seeks to identify, remove, prevent, and mitigate racially inequitable outcomes and power imbalances between groups and change the structures that sustain inequities. It is also helpful to understand the definition of inclusive. Inclusive processes, policies, services, programs, and practices are accessible to and usable by as many people as possible, regardless of race, ethnic origin, gender, age, disability, and language. An inclusive environment is open, safe, equitable, and respectful. Everyone can enjoy a sense of trust, belonging, and involvement, and everyone is being encouraged to contribute and participate fully. Definitions of anti-Black racism, anti-racism approach, inclusive, and intersectionality are all retrieved from the Government of Ontario website.
How can you help? For youth, it means that you create spaces for young people to use their voice. You educate them on how the system operates, and you give them tools on how they can dismantle the system. You give them choices. You give youth choices to create their own path, and where they experience barriers, you create a way. You encourage them so youth can empower themselves. You create spaces for representation, people that look like them, to mentor and support them. You include their stories, their culture, and their lived experiences in your curriculum and reading lists. You post pictures of people that look like them on the wall alongside the pictures of their friends. You promote and engage their success, their creativity, their art, their experiences, and their identity in spaces where they once felt ignored and isolated. You learn to examine your own biases and belief systems, and you learn to accept guilt. When you do, when you give Black youth space to develop and cultivate their identity, you develop a strong Black community, a stronger city and region, a stronger province, and a much stronger nation. Imagine if all our children had no barriers to access success. Imagine how far along we would be as a nation. Join and follow the Kajenga Wellness Project. Take part in their events and programs. The advisory group is a council of community members who provide guidance and support to the project for the next 3 years. The youth ambassadors play a critical role in promoting our programs, attending events, and learning about advocacy and civic engagement. Our facilitators, workshop leaders, and writers provide a diverse sample of information about supports available for the Black community.
Support Black Lives Matter. So in your community, support the Kajenga Wellness Project and similar programs. Become an ally and advocate for equity. Advocate for yearly equity training in your organization. Mentor and support Black professionals in the workplace and engage in self-reflection and analysis. Thank you again for viewing our webinar. We encourage you to do your own research regarding the anti-Black racism and the Black Lives Matter movement.
Because of your audacity to say all men are created equal in the eyes of God, but disparage a man based on the